Without energy, you cannot see. Without energy, a country can lose up to 4% of its GDP. Desert to power. Let's turn Africa into a renewable energy powerhouse.
Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, and my dear big brother, the Premier David Makhura of Gauteng Province, members of South Africa's Parliament, honorable ministers, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, business leaders, investors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. President, for such an inspiring, visionary speech loaded with incredible results. Now, please let me express my personal feeling before I start. This is a very responsive, focused, determined, and accountable president. Mr. President, you're way too modest for all of what you have achieved. And as you realize those numbers, please, I would like us to rise and really applaud him because it's a fantastic job the president has done. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, thank you very much for the great honor and invitation to join you today and to speak at the 2022 South Africa Investment Conference. Of course, I'm delighted to be here with your junior sister, Grace. I remember in 2018 when you came up with this idea of a South Africa Investment Conference. It was at the same time that the African Development Bank and its partners were establishing the African Investment Forum here in Johannesburg. They say, great minds think alike. Well, I think visionaries also do. They see the big picture of success long before others do. You are visionary. You were bold. You understood that the economy, for it to grow, South Africa needed to expand private sector investments and to create jobs. Investors responded positively. They saw an economy powered by a business-savvy president who acts like a chief executive officer, and they showed their interest and support with their checkbooks. The South Africa Investment Conference has mobilized 774 billion rands. Congratulations, Mr. President. Congratulations, South Africa. The point was made loud and clear. South Africa is bankable. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have seen President Ramaphosa in action in Africa and globally. He treats every engagement as if he is in a boardroom. He even sold some of the Ankole cows on his farm and struck hard bargains, including for Cinderella, for Zaria, and Fafa, which is sold to a family member, no discount. What a deal maker, Mr. President. President Ramaphosa, with incredulous zeal and resolute and disarming calmness, with sophisticated hands like somebody on the spindle, weaves every deal thread into beautiful investment tapestries. I can tell you, President Ramaphosa is South Africa's #1 salesman to the world. I have watched him turn adversity into business opportunity, even amid COVID-19 pandemic, as it positions South Africa as the solutions provider for vaccines. Today, the world has turned to South Africa's BioVac and Aspen Pharmacare to manufacture vaccines in South Africa. Today, thanks to its leadership and business savviness, Johnson & Johnson set up the continent's first mRNA vaccine manufacturing plant to supply 300 million doses. Not only is South Africa the leading industrialized country in Africa, it is also a pace setter. Thanks to South African scientists and leadership, Omicron was identified even before the world woke up. I watched President Ramaphosa push for waiver of trade-related intellectual property rights at the World Trade Organization to assure the production of vaccines, turning intellectual property rights to where it counts, towards life, towards the production, local manufacturing of life-saving vaccines, especially in Africa. When the African Development Bank and its partners, which includes the Development Bank of South Africa, Africa 50, Afri-Exim Bank, Trade and Development Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, the Islamic Development Bank, and the European Investment Bank organized the first Africa Investment Forum right here, right in the same place at the Sandton Center in Johannesburg. President Ramaphosa supported us fully, together with Premier David Makhura of Gauteng. He joined us as we marketed deals and projects to global investors. It was the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because you are. The inaugural Africa Investment Forum in 2018 brought together project sponsors from 24 countries right here in Johannesburg. In less than 24 hours, in what looked like a really breezy morning, actually, it was a little bit cold, deals warmed up the corridors of the Sandton Convention Center. Investment deals worth $38.7 billion were secured. It was a landmark for Africa. We were back right here in Johannesburg for the Africa Investment Forum in 2019, and deals worth $40.1 billion were also secured within less than 72 hours at the Africa Investment Forum. There's something about the Sandton Convention Center. I think great things happen from here. Among the deals already closed for South Africa includes a $500 million for Africa Infrastructure Investment Fund, $350 million for a beef processing project in South Africa. Among them also is a $25 billion liquefied natural gas project for Mozambique, which will make it the third largest producer of liquefied natural gas in the world. And I would like to thank you especially, Mr. President, because that investment had some projects in the Cabo Delgado area. I want to thank you for your outstanding leadership and those of the SADC heads of state and government, and that of President Kagame of Rwanda that made it happen. The place is stable now. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And the beat goes on. Last week, the Africa Investment Forum investment boardrooms for 2021, earlier postponed due to Omicron, held virtually. With 300 investors from around the world, it was all about deals, deals, and deals. Again, within 72 hours, it secured $32.8 billion worth of investment interest for projects in Africa. This includes $15.6 billion for the Lagos to Abidjan Highway Corridor, a $3.5 billion railway project to connect Tanzania, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Rwanda. The deals also included a $140 million health fund right here in South Africa to provide access to world-class oncology care. So in just 3 years, the Africa Investment Forum, which we started right from here, has become Africa's premier investment marketplace, mobilizing $100 billion of investment interest to Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Africa is bankable. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank believes in South Africa. You can see it in what we do. The bank's current portfolio of investment in South Africa totals $3.2 billion. The African Development Bank's current financing to South Africa's private financial sector amounts to 16.5 billion rands, or $1.1 billion, including support to the Development Bank of South Africa and lines of credit and trade finance facilities to leading domestic banks. The African Development Bank provided a loan of 6.2 billion rands, or $413 million, to Transnet, which His Excellency Mr. President mentioned. This has allowed Transnet to modernize its rolling stock fleet, acquire new rolling stock, and increase its freight capacity by 120%, from 80 metric tons to 176 metric tons. We provided a total of 48 billion rands, that's $3.2 billion, to the energy sector, which His Excellency Mr. President also mentioned, including Eskom's capital expenditure and the Medupi Power Project. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the bank has since gradually shifted our financing towards renewable energy. We supported the 100 megawatt Sere wind power plant with 884.9 million rands, or $69 million. We supported Zina 100 megawatts solar concentrated power plant with 1.45 billion rands. And last year, Mr. President, we financed the Redstone 100 megawatts solar project with 2.3 billion rands, or $152 million. Mr. President, I did ask you to please help us unlock or unblock the challenges being faced for this project. I was excited when you talked about the presidential unit in your office. You did, and you brought it back on track. Your intervention, Mr. President, paid off. 8 days ago, the Redstone Solar Project was awarded the African Renewable Deal of the Year by the prestigious IJ Global Journal. Congratulations again. We supported the Medupi coal power plant. We will now move to support the drive towards renewable energy strongly in South Africa as you drive towards net zero emissions. Mr. President, I salute your leadership and commitment in driving energy transition for South Africa. As South Africa moves towards energy transition, the African Development Bank will strongly support your efforts. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, net zero cannot be achieved with zero financing. The African Development Bank is preparing a 6 billion rand support, which will be $400 million, towards the support of Eskom in its transition to renewable energy. I applaud the G7 countries for their commitment of $8.5 billion to South Africa's just energy transition. Mr. President, the African Development Bank, working in partnership with international partners, especially the G7 countries, plans to establish a just energy transition facility that will support South Africa to raise at least $27 billion to support its energy transition into renewable energy. We will do it, Mr. President, without South Africa getting into debt, and that's very important. This will transform South Africa into a global leader in energy transition. It will move South Africa away from coal into renewable energy. It will reduce pollution and negative externalities of impacts of carbon emissions on health and the environment. It is an excellent opportunity to recalibrate the Southern African economy, to generate thousands and thousands of green jobs, and power new green industries for a more competitive economy for South Africa. Mr. President, you can count on the African Development Bank. We will help you to make it work. We promise we deliver. Mr. President, because you are also a big shareholder of the African Development Bank, it's important for me to say to you and to South Africans that you can be proud of the African Development Bank, your bank. In 2021, the African Development Bank was ranked the best multilateral financial institution in the world by Global Finance, the renowned US financial magazine. The African Development Bank strongly supports South Africa's investment conference, from energy to infrastructure, the establishment of agro-industrial parks, to support to the private sector, small and medium-sized enterprises to create jobs for the youth especially, as you said, Mr. President. We will provide robust support. Your Excellency, Mr. President, I'm therefore delighted to announce that the African Development Bank will commit 42.5 billion rands, that's $2.8 billion, to South Africa over the next 5 years. This financing will support public and private sector investments in priority areas that you have laid out of agriculture, renewable energy, transport, youth employment, health, vaccines manufacturing, among others. We know South Africa is bankable. Your Excellency, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the African Development Bank will be by your side as South Africa powers its economy forward for a more glorious future, a greater and better future, with quality jobs for South Africa's youth, a greater and better future for South Africa's resilient women. Yes, for South Africa's youth and women, because when the youth and the women win, South Africa wins. I believe in South Africa. If you believe in South Africa, say I do. Thank you very much.
Without energy, you cannot see, nor heal, nor live. Without energy, a country cannot develop, neither socially nor economically. Without energy, a country can lose up to 4% of its GDP. With an average GDP 2.5 times lower than the rest of the continent, the countries of the Sahel are among the most vulnerable in Africa. And yet, you can find energy everywhere. You just need to see it. Because the Sahel is one of the sunniest regions in the world. Let's exploit it. Desert to power. Let's turn Africa into a renewable energy powerhouse.
Uma produção SBC Mídia.